not touch the remote. Because if you do, you will miss the maiden voyage of Just Sayin. I'm here in the studio with Selectman, and yes, I did say it, Selectman Christopher Weeder. And we're going to be talking about a whole bunch of things. He's going to give you information and analysis and commentary you won't get anywhere else. And I just wanted to say that we're going to be doing this every 2 weeks after each Board of Selectmen's meeting. So now, Chris, do people still say maiden voyage? It's too.
No.
It's yeah.
They don't. But
I know.
That's okay.
But it's
Debut.
okay.
Debut.
You know, I am so very glad that in their wisdom that those people said in common parlance we can say what we want.
Yes.
I mean, it's very decent of them. They're very decent people.
It will help next year if I run for selectman again. I can keep my signs.
That's right. Well, you will, won't you?
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Now, I just wanted to ask you about this roof truss issue. So how did that all get started?
I guess the
truss business.
Well, the truss is about 3 or 4 years ago. The school has two parts. It has an addition that was built about 20 years ago, and has the main part, which is a little about 25 years old. And a couple of years back, I think it's now 3 or 4, there was they noticed after a snowstorm when they went back into school that some of the lights had fallen. So I think Bob Bullock had gone up, and they noticed some of the trusses on the main part of the school had been compromised. The trusses are on a normal conventional home. You have roof rafters. In a commercial building similar to the schools, they build trusses. So they're actually built off-site, brought on site, and installed.
Now, wasn't that too early for them to have gone bad?
It was probably surprising that they actually failed. The building code probably when that building was built required 28 pounds per square foot of load. So it was probably surprising, but it happened. But they didn't lose a lot, but they did lose some trusses, and they actually fell, which caused some breaches. No children were at harm. The roof didn't collapse. It's just some of the trusses broke. So what they did was they were able to, through insurance, they were able to go in during the summer of that year and reinforce all the trusses in the main part of the building. So that's been satisfied. And my guess is that during this...
And when was that?
This was probably 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh, not that long ago.
No, it wasn't. It was after, I think, the 2015 or 2014 heavy snows we had. So then, I guess part of this bid package that they put together for the new roof became looking at the trusses of the addition, which were built about 20 years ago. And there was always rumors surrounding these trusses that they weren't built to code. Code being the current snow load, which I think at this time was 35 pounds
per square foot.
But no one, it's one of those. It's very strange because a truss, when it's manufactured, there's engineers in a factory who design it, so they check it before it leaves the factory. It's stamped and checked again. Then you have obviously a clerk of the works or an engineer, an architect on site, who obviously checks to make sure those trusses meet the standards. So it seems very surprising that those trusses were not built to conformity when they got delivered to the HL Day School. During installation, maybe there was some compromise, but there was never a breach in the addition at the HL Day School.
The addition's the smaller part.
The smaller section to the left when you're looking at the school.
So the trusses that they want to have replaced with the roof are including the ones that were fixed 3 or 4 years ago?
No, they just want to go into the addition and just reinforce. And I guess my guess is it's just reinforce those existing trusses. So that's part of this project, is to cut out the plywood, the sheathing as we call it, go in, check trusses, reinforce trusses. To me, it was. I said at town meeting, it's an overkill. There's really I don't see any need for us to do this.
So suppose, and once the new roof is put on, then something does happen to those trusses. They can go in and be fixed.
They could still have gone in and fixed them. Yes, yeah. Because again, even on the older section, when this happened, the shingles were not compromised. Looking at the school, you would have never known there was a breach. It was only that they noticed the drop ceilings had slightly fallen, a couple of lights had fallen, and that's all it was.
So but then the town wouldn't have gotten any money for that if they had to go in later.
If they had gone later, there may have been some insurance money, but probably not. Probably would have been on the cost of the town to fix them if there was a breach. But again, there wasn't one, and it's been 20 years. We've had a lot of snowstorms. As I said at town meeting, the new policy of most schools is if we get 20 plus inches of snow, they shovel their roofs. It just becomes common practice.
Right.
And I imagine Norfolk will do the same thing on shingle roofs like this in the future. So I just didn't see the need to go in and start doing this kind of work. I would have rather seen no mold testing was done, in my understanding. I would have rather seen us spend money checking to make sure there's no mold. If they say the building's leaking, that would have been my first concern, is did anybody do any mold testing to make sure
That's never been brought up, has it, in public?
No, and I mean, I would hate to find out later that there is mold in there and we've got to go in and do remediation. So that's a concern. But
Well, isn't that kind of a standard practice if you're going to go in and take care of
it didn't seem to be. They said there was no mold, but I don't recall anybody having a professional come in and take care of that.
God,
so
help us.
That could be a concern down the road.
And then somebody at the selectmen's meeting was calling on you to go and talk to them again. I mean, after you got up and you said what you said.
Yeah, it was.
And then you were contradicted 6 ways from Sunday, and all kinds of drama.
Yeah.
And now somebody's wanting you to see if you can talk to them. But as you pointed out, they have applied for their bond.
Right. The contractor, he's obviously put together his bid. He's fulfilled all the requirements of MSBA for this project. He has to pull it when he bid the job. He has to pull a bond, and then he also has to pull a bond when he's awarded the contract. So to ask him to go back on, May 22nd.
So excuse me. So there are 2 different times when he asks
he
for
has
insurance.
To bid up, he pulls a bond when he bids it. There's a bid bond. So all contractors.
That's insurance.
Yes. So he pulls a bid bond first, and then he pulls a performance payment bond when he's actually going to do the work. So right when the contract is signed, usually before they start the work, they have to provide a copy of their bond, which is a labor and material bond.
So it's not true then, because I had heard that if something were substituted, such as the aluminum for the copper,
right,
that if something were substituted, then that part of it would not be covered by any money from the state. Is that right, or is that not right? Because that was a little confusing to me.
What would happen is you'd have to, and that's why I said it didn't make any sense for me to suddenly become the consultant. I mean, I only found out about this project a week before town meeting, but once the contractor submitted his bid, to go back and say, well, let's remove the copper and let's either use aluminum or use shingles. I mean, remember, the building is shingled now completely. If we're going to put this, quote, 50-year shingle on it, why not just put shingles on it again? The whole rest of the roof's going to have a 50-year shingle. Why does the cupola and the monitors have to have anything other than shingles? Made no sense to put anything else up there. And when they say longevity, if the shingles are going to last 50 years, why wouldn't the shingles on the monitors and on the cupola last 50 years?
So by monitors, you mean, I'm sorry, excuse me.
Yeah, go ahead.
So by monitors, you mean those little dormer things
correct,
where there's nothing inside there?
Right. They're
so
going
there's
put
nothing,
those, no reason. To me,
will it even be visible?
Yeah. I think actually the only place you see them from is you see the cupola obviously from the entrance, but the monitors I only think you see from the courtyard.
So what in God's name?
It's just,
is that all about?
And that's what I mean. I think my point was it's frivolous spending. Copper, it was stated that copper is only 50 cents a square foot more expensive.
Oh yes, that was even I knew that.
Copper's $3.33 more per square foot than aluminum. And it's
so it's
more than
double?
More than double, 109%. And it's certainly even greater than shingles. And again, if you're going to shingle the roof is shingled today. Why not just put shingles back? If you've got such a great shingle, why would you need to put aluminum or copper up there?
So was it for looks?
My understanding, I was told one of the comments
to
made
show their affluence?
The affluence of the town. And I just thought that was, we have between fire stations and other things, and even the superintendent mentioned that she'd like to bring back world language, and she'd like to get another math teacher. Well, there's $100,000 a year that we can't now utilize towards that. And
the roads.
And you take $1 million, Bob McGee could do 2 or 3 roads in town if he had that $1 million completely. And everybody talks about the roads, how bad they are, and we could use that money for that.
Is there a realtor, to your knowledge, is there a realtor lobby in town? Because I bet they're getting mad that people aren't buying the houses because they're going this way and that, trying to look at the houses and going into these potholes.
There's a lot to be said for a town that has a lot of potholes when you're looking at real estate. I mean, you're pulling into a town and all you do is run over potholes on Seekonk Street, on Cleveland Street, on 115. It doesn't say much. And I think Bob McGee's aware of that, but his hands are tied because the money is being spent elsewhere. And he's having to rely on Chapter 90 funds, which just do not get us.
And what is that?
That's the money we get from the lottery, from the state.
Oh, from the lottery.
So, yeah, that's all that Chapter 90 money is, that money. And, it only goes so far, and we don't get that much. And if you look at it, I think at town meeting he presented it, he's got at least, I think, 10 or 12 roads that need to be completely milled and repaved. And then he's going to do patching on almost, I think there's 15 or 20 roads.
And the patching really is...
The patching's tough. And, now they've gotten to a better program of patching sections.
Yes.
Which is better than we used to do,
right.
Which is with the pothole repairs. So I think that's going to help. But $1 million, $2 million goes a long way towards our roads.
Now, isn't there a cupola somewhere in town as we speak?
There is. There's a couple of cupolas.
I mean, sitting around.
Just
not being used.
No. We don't have any cupolas. No.
Well, I thought there was. I thought I heard somebody said there was a. Or I'm talking about maybe it was windows.
Yes, windows. There is. Last year, Sean Dooley, I guess, through a grant, was able to get new windows for the H. Olive Day School, for up in the cupola. If you notice the cupola,
that's my. Okay, that's what I was.
And my point was, if we received those windows last year, why didn't we use some of the money and put those windows in last year? If we're so energy conscious, why not put
them?
Who
knows?
I don't know why. I would have thought that would have been the time to do it. It just seemed as if this. I know the word was we want to make it better than minimum. If we wanted to do the minimum, we would have just reshingled the roof. You could do a go-over on that roof. It only has one layer of shingles, and you could actually have gone over that layer of shingles with another layer of shingles. Yes.
Is that standard?
You're allowed to put 2 layers of shingles on a roof in Massachusetts.
Oh, you are?
Yeah. So that would have been the minimum.
Yeah.
And my point was, if you look at this school, they did a lot of work, 20 and 25. Remember, it's only a 25-year-old school. Right. I mean, I'm living in a house that's almost 100 years old. Most homes in towns are 30, 40 years old. And people aren't doing, major, exterior restorations. We hope we don't. And, there's a lot of aluminum on that roof. There's integral gutters. It was actually well put together. It's actually a very pretty school. And I think it's a shame when and even the chimney. I mean, they're going to completely repoint the chimney, new through-wall flashing. It just doesn't make sense.
That didn't come, did that?
It was part of the bid, but it wasn't really discussed, but it just didn't make a lot of sense to me. It seems like it isn't just doing the bare minimum we're talking. This is doing a building restoration, which I don't think this school needed. If you took off the shingles, you could do a lot of work with ice and water shield. You could do that properly. You'd install the shingles.
Are they going to put?
They're going to do a complete ice and water shield, but they're going to put insulation underneath it, which is great. But the problem is the insulation cost, this insulation board they're using, it's, as I said at town meeting, it's going to take 30 plus years to recoup the first gallon of oil that we saved.
Yeah, you can't make this stuff up, can you?
To me, it just makes no sense. I mean, if you want to go in and do some batten or do some insulation through other grants, I had mentioned the Green Initiative, down the road, great. But to spend that kind of money that we're not going to recoup, and I assume $15,000, $20,000 a year in energy savings. That's how I come up with 20, 30 years.
So even considering that?
If we don't, and that's a lot of money to be saved in oil. If we don't achieve that much, it's even going to take longer. So it just seems like it's not.
And now you know this how?
Because I know what the cost of the panels are. And what I did was I basically used the average price of oil today.
So you kind of worked it out?
Yeah, worked out the numbers.
You did?
Yeah. So it would take at least 20 to 30 years. And it just, to me, is just crazy. That's not a good investment. A 30-year payback is not an investment. I talked to one of the principals at Beacon Sales, which is one of the largest sales companies that sells roofing products.
Does he live in town?
And he lives in town. And he even said, I hope you're not going to approve this project. I mean, this is somebody who sells this for a living. It's to his advantage. He probably would have been the supplier of choice for Greenwood. It's one of the companies they rely on.
Why didn't he get up?
I don't know if he was in town during town meeting.
Not everybody's cup of tea to get up there.
May not have been. But he was concerned. So I think a lot of people looked at this and thought it was a little, and we didn't know about it. Nobody knew this was coming down till, like I said, a week before town meeting. And
so it was all kept quiet.
Well, I don't know if it was kept quiet. It just wasn't. It wasn't made. We knew a year ago, last fall, we knew that they had asked for some money to do a study of the roof. But that's the last I heard of it. I never heard any more. But I think I think a little more planning, and I think it was, I didn't like the statements made at town meeting that we were trying to do minimal, that people do more than the minimum. You could do a lot more than the minimum. But again, we don't need to go plate our school roofs. We don't need to go plate any building. And timing is everything. I think it was bad timing, in my opinion. The fire station.
Now, the $70 figure that, that you mentioned, that's what the buyer, that's not what the actual workmen get. That's what is billed.
No. That's what the worker gets in his paycheck. In prevailing wage laws, the Davis-Bacon Act.
They get $70?
A roofer gets $70.76 an hour in his paycheck. And overtime.
And what is billed?
And what is billed, well, they price it over $100 an hour. But the point is, when you're putting together your quote, you have 8 weeks in the summertime, you have to take into account rain. And since there was a clause in there that there would be a penalty if they didn't get it finished by school starting, the contractor, you know he's going to put in for a certain amount of overtime.
So let me get this.
So you're going to have roofers making over $100 an hour to get it done.
So these people from Central America that work for cooks, they're not making $70 an hour.
No, because they're probably not able to do prevailing wage work. You have to be certified. You have to have a DCAM rating. So there's a lot that goes into being certified by the state. It's the DCAM process, the Division of Capital Asset Management. You have to be certified in order to do
because it's
commercial work in Boston and around.
And not residential.
Not residential. So,
that's interesting.
So it's actually it's an extensive program. And Greenwood Industry, like ourselves, and we couldn't do a job like this. It's too large for our company. But Greenwood we compete against, and they have close to 150, 175 men.
One of the Facebook posts, somebody said, well, I hear our new selectman is a roofer. Maybe he'll give us a good price.
I wish I could have. But we don't have enough men to do a job like that.
But again, I mean, how in the, one thing first. I mean, how in the world people talk. How in the world could nobody have said, let's put these windows in?
Yeah, again,
how would they know?
I would have thought that should have been done last year. If they were bought last year, we're so energy conscious.
So
they should have been put in.
Who would have put that in?
I think it would have been
No,
it would have been done through maintenance. Would have been done through the schools and through maintenance. And it could have been done on vacation week.
And the schools take care of their own maintenance.
They do.
So it really goes back on them.
I would think in their budget they should have accounted for that. Yeah, and I would have put them in last year. So again, yes, we are getting. The MSBA grant is, part of that includes the window installation, but you're really not. It's like Washington's birthday, in my opinion. You're going to buy a car on Washington's birthday. It's $60,000, but we're going to give you $18,000 in free stuff, and we're going to give you 0% financing. Nobody's giving away anything for free.
When I grew up in D.C., just as an aside, that was a huge thing, selling the cars on the president's birthdays.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, but. This whole business about transparency, and the other thing that I'm kind of going off the topic, but the other thing I was thinking of is, I've lived here 23 years, and it's only really been since we've had that Facebook page. You did not know what was going on, who was doing it, when. If you weren't in a certain circle at a certain time, that was my perception.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden they're worried about transparency.
Yeah, we used to have a newspaper.
Better late than never, but.
Yeah, we used to have a newspaper.
Correct.
And I think people really resonated with that. Most of us grew up with a local newspaper. It is surprising, but it's not economical anymore. So I think the community page does a good job. It gets the word out there. People find out about good restaurants. They find out about services. But and I think there's other avenues. Hopefully this will be another avenue for people to learn information about what's going on in town. And I think there's a couple other initiatives. And us. And there'll be other initiatives. There'll be other initiatives in town.
And now to go back, though, to the selectmen's meeting. Yes. So how on earth did Matt... Why did he make that mistake about the prices? What is he?
I don't know where he got his pricing. Well, he's the facility director in town.
And what does that mean?
He's in charge of maintenance. So the schools, the town buildings, the police station. He's in charge of the heating systems, the AC systems.
That's what his specialty?
Yes, the cleaning of the schools. That's his specialty.
So could it be that he just orders have these things to be done and doesn't know the particulars? Even I knew.
Yeah, I think this was a mistake. There was a mistake made by somebody. There's certainly a large discrepancy in the price of copper versus other metals. And copper, my company does work for the city of Newton, and they have no longer installed copper. Downspouts,
Newton of all places.
Yeah, and copper on downspouts.
Speaking of affluence.
roofs, yeah, they don't, because it all gets stolen, and so they no longer do it either.
And then you've got
so.
that risk of somebody walking in while they're trying to seal something.
Yep.
And then doesn't it all turn dark anyway?
It eventually turns bronze in color, which is the idea behind it. It's patinas. So it turns a bronze, and then in 50 or so years, it turns a green color. But so it does eventually turn. So you no longer get that shiny copper look in about 2 or 3 years. So.
Now, the other thing was, there was a discussion that you had with the chairman, with Kevin, about the B1 committee and an economic development. Now, let me just make sure I understand this, because I get these things all mixed up. Because many years ago, like 20 years ago, there was an economic development, which I was on, of all things. I mean, but I went, and people would come in and they'd complain. They say, I don't know what to do. They want to do this, that I do that, and at the same time I have to have this. Blah, blah, blah. And so John Oliveri, I don't know if he's still around, the son, he wanted to have this roadmap so everything would be laid out for people to see what they had to do when, and not just be told haphazardly. Mm-hmm. And then I guess it disbanded. I know. I got thrown off because I missed a meeting, and so I didn't.
Terrible.
Just kind of. I know it. And Beverly Panettiere was. I remember Beverly Panettiere. She was a realtor at the time. I don't know where she is.
Yeah.
She was on. And then, so did it start up again?
It hasn't started up. I think we have the B1, which is actually members of all the different committees in town: zoning board, planning board.
Are you on that?
I'm not.
Somebody from your.
Yeah, Devin Howe, who's our he's an engineer.
Yeah.
And he's great. And Devin volunteered to be part of that. But every committee in town, the advisory board, and then there's a couple of citizens at large who are on it as well. And it is looking at the B1 in total, what zoning changes, and they're working with us with a state grant, what zoning changes could be made in the B1 to make it more attractive to business. That's what they're.
So why didn't they do that a long time ago? Because they made them.
Well, we did years ago. We had a master plan that was developed back in '99, and then in 2007, the master plan was then revitalized, and so that really was what you would almost say was your zoning map. The interesting is, if you look at that today, which is now 11 years since it was last edited, it still talks about, building up town center, new police station, new fire station. So here we've gone almost 20 years, and we're still fighting the same issues we fought 20 years ago.
Because I remember listen, look, people do it, it was well-intentioned and all that, but I remember this video, and it sort of looked as if,
the bakeries were going to rise out of the ground, and we had a bridge.
Right out of
we had a bridge to nowhere. Yes, we had a bridge to nowhere.
So did that mean that they were going to buy those strip malls from the owners and then put the stuff on the top? Or
no, I think they were just trying to give a visualization of what we could be. What we could be. And I think that's what the B1's trying to do, is look and see what can be done within our existing zoning to make it more attractive to business. The problem with that is anything we do in the center town. Then I look at that as every time we've done a master plan update, the number one thing by most citizens is town center. Mm-hmm. They're not as worried about down in the C1 district, which is down where Eagle Brook is, and Norfolk Glass is. They're not as worried about that. That seems to be growing fine, but they're worried about the center of town. Where is a place for people to meet? And so that's been the focus. But the only sewer system we have is the wastewater treatment, they call it, is for Meeting House, Walgreens, and Silas. They're on a water treatment plant.
And that's what you mean by infrastructure.
Correct. And then you have stormwater, which is one of the other big infrastructures, which is how you get the water that flows from the rain
to run off. And
our existing system can't handle any greater loads at the current time. One of the articles at the Selectmen's meeting was we're going to be doing a study with a company called PAR to actually see if our drainage systems that we have in place, one that goes down Boardman Street and the main line that goes down Main Street, if they're large enough to take more capacity. So we're looking at that right now. And this is where the
water, forgive my ignorance, this is where the water runs down the street and goes in the drains.
Exactly, and eventually ends up at Downtown Pond, and then goes down to the Mill River, down through Stop River. So it's really it's got a whole system, but you can't just allow the water to pond and build up.
Right.
So those two areas we haven't done a lot of work on, and no restaurant no business is going to come here if we don't develop an infrastructure.
So the storm water is different than the water that's going to come out of houses and
Correct.
apartments when
Correct.
people
Correct.
cook and do what they have to do.
Correct. Yep. And the system we have that feeds Meeting House, which is the condos, Silla's, and Walgreens, I don't think it's large enough to handle a 65 or 75 seat restaurant because of the minimum requirements necessary. So that's what we have to develop.
And what about Town Hill and the credit union? What are they using?
The credit union, I think, has its own system. They'll have their own on-site system of wastewater.
Now those
And I know they have their own on-site system for stormwater.
now those pipes, are they old? Underneath that the water
A number
ultimately
of them
goes
are,
to?
a number of them are very old. A number of them are very
Because
old.
down at Seekonk Street, down from where I am, there was a big problem there, and they were digging, and they were doing this, and there's a hydrant there, and there was water running over, and I think it had to do with when they were digging, when Columbia was digging the pipeline for this prison,
Yep.
and something went wrong, and something got blocked. And because it was kind of like sunken down, and I guess they had to build it up, and they had to, they had to do all these things.
A lot of these pipes are the old metal pipes, and they rust. So now they've gone to a PVC type of pipe, so it's much better, lasts a lot longer.
But the main pipes that have rusted, aren't they? I mean, that's a big job to replace those things, is it not?
If we have to go in and start to replace some piping, it's going to be a major expense, yeah, and that's what that evaluation is going to be.
Which evaluation?
The one from PAR, the one that was approved at Selectmen's meeting, yeah.
So now, okay, so you had said at the Selectmen's meeting that you thought there was this overlap between the B1 and the economic development. So what is the overlap, and what's the difference?
Well, the overlap is unless you make zoning changes that are friendly to business, you're not going to have any economic development. They really need to go to the businesses that are here and to potential properties. You have the Chipman property, which was what spurred on this PAR study.
Well, that's one of the five. I think you told me about the five.
That's across from the post office.
Yeah.
You have the Al Quaglier property, which is 194 Main Street.
Where the house is in back.
Right, and he's going to be looking, right now he's actually looking at a 40B on that property. He's coming to the Zoning Board of Appeals for a 40B.
And is that going to be that's not going to be multi-story, is it?
It will be multi-story. It'll be an apartment, but because of the grade, it actually won't be any higher than anything in the area.
Because it'll go down the back?
It goes down very low. So that will be actually, a lot of it will be down much below the street.
And that would be like the basement or whatever?
No, it'll be actually units down there, yeah. And then you have obviously the property in front of Walgreens.
Okay.
That to be developed. And then you have the Primtives property, which is right next to Dunkin' Donuts. They've got a small lot there, which they'd like to develop. And they were, at one point, we're talking about a fish store or a fish restaurant, which would be great.
Oh.
And then you actually have Old Town Hall, which we haven't sold, which is good because I think we don't know what that might be. And so we have Old Town Hall, we have that parking lot, we have the old, what was called the water garage. So that's a large parcel.
What was that?
It used to be the water department.
Down in the back there?
Right, the water department used to use that. Now the fire department uses it. So those are about the only parcels we have in the center of town, other than the existing Wayside and the other one, down by the liquor store.
Now, somebody told me you know who it was that took down the fire escapes.
Yes, it was me. Well, it was a big to-do about this. The reason we had to sell the building, or tear it down, was because the fire escape. And so I went over there and I looked at it and I said, so take it down, remove the hazard. So I got permission from Jack Hathaway, and I went over there on my own with one other fellow, and we cut it up, tore it down, and removed the hazard.
And being as old as it was, had the building still been operant, would it have been a safe fire escape? Because it was probably not all that sturdy to begin with,
I think
right?
it was actually well built.
Oh,
it was actually very sturdy. Oh yeah, it was just, again, maintenance. I mean, I think the one mistake we made with that building was it has great bones. It really does. And it was there's a lot of history to it. A lot of the
What does that mean?
It was well built. It was a well built structure. I mean, it has a huge safe in it that the town used to use.
I remember that.
And it was well built. But they just, when you stop maintaining, of course it's going to start falling
Now,
apart.
have mice at all, and snakes and whatnot gone
mice,
in there?
There's probably mice. I guess there's some mold because the roof leaked and they didn't fix it. And I think that's a shame because, again, it has some history to it.
Yes, it does.
I mean, it was a fire station at one point. It was a police station at one point.
Really?
Yes, and there's actually, I think Donna Jones has photos of it where a lot of the locals worked on the building and did all the renovations themselves back in the 20s and 30s. So it has some history to it. So, I hate to see it torn down, but due to the lack of maintenance, it may eventually have to be torn down. But I wouldn't want to do that till we really decide.
And that's town property, of course.
Yes, if people want to make it into a museum, we could use CPC funds if we wanted to, to renovate it and do some with it. So I think it's worthwhile holding on to. I think we don't know what our future is yet. We don't know how many people will be coming to town, and we may find out we need that building. And I think it could be restored and made to look very nice.
Be a big chunk of money, though, wouldn't it?
It would, but again, we have CPC funds, so we could use community preservation funds, which we're allowed to use.
But I mean, just painting that would be, what, $20,000?
Oh, I don't think it'd be that much.
No?
But it would be, you could do it over time.
And then there's all the inside that has to be.
Yeah, you could do it over time. I mean, Millis just had a dedication for one of their original fire stations. They just completely renovated, and it's beautiful. And it's over by Saigon, if you know where the restaurant is over there. Yeah. So I mean, it's
down that road
there,
is it? Down past Liberty Lane.
Yes.
Victory Lane.
Victory Lane. Yeah. So so we could do something like that. So it's worth looking at.
So those are the 5 places, but why were you? I remember you saying that you thought that the B1 should go ahead and do what it has to do instead of reviving this economic development.
Let's find out what the B1's going to do. If they can come forward, this committee, with some positive zoning articles, and the town approves them, so that we can. That would
be in the fall.
That would be in the fall town meeting. I think it's November 15th or 17th. If we can do that. Then maybe if you want to set up an economic development committee to say, how do we implement these changes? How do we draw people in now? To me, that makes sense. I think to have both of them working on the same thing. If we don't get zoning changes, if we don't do that, we're not going to have any economic development. And that's really the end. That's the end of the trail. If you can't do the zoning changes, just stop worrying about it. The only thing you'll be able to do is develop the property right across with any kind of luster, with any kind of idea that a restaurant would be coming, would be just to develop those existing properties and basically develop them the only ways they can. Similar to what Craig O'Leary has to do, is that he's going to do a 40B because he cannot develop that property economically with our current zoning. Just can't.
Now, I have a question about that liaison business of the. So the purpose of that is that somebody's having a problem. Like say you took the senior center.
Correct.
So if somebody's having an issue over there with whatever, they can go to you.
Right.
Because I don't know who was the liaison before, but I know that there was some dissatisfaction over there.
Right.
And they had gone to Jack and hadn't gotten anywhere. And I guess if everything finally shook out.
Right.
But should they not have gone to the selectman who was their liaison?
And I don't know if they did or did not. They might have gone to the liaison first. But ideally, they should be able to come to the liaison. The liaison should be active as well. I mean, I plan on being active with all the different roles I took to talk to them, see what's going on. I mean, there's the Council on Aging, there's the Senior Center. We really,
they're not one. Oh no, they're not one and the same.
I don't think they are. And so you want to meet with these groups and get common goals for the next year.
Now, what else did you take?
I think I took Council on Aging. I took the ZBA, obviously. I took the Norfolk, the Tri-County School, which more of a technical school, which will be enjoyable. And I took Community Preservation. So we can open up the conversations about Old Town Hall in those meetings. So it should be interesting.
It was kind of funny because you started and then you looked down the table and then you said, "I guess I'm going to do them all."
That's right. Nobody was talking. So we didn't
moment of levity.
We don't want to have a moment of silence there, right? So yes.
Because again, this. It's always sort of seemed to me that when I was on that, economic development committee, and I heard these people coming, it just always sort of seemed to me that on these boards, that there would be 1 or 2 people that would kind of control everything, and if they didn't want business to come into town, well, business was not going to be coming into town, and I don't think people wanted to get on these boards and then feel it was pointless because it was a done deal.
Yeah, I think it's very hard. I think
I wonder if that's changed.
I hope it has. I think it's very hard. I mean, volunteerism, as we all know, it's time consuming, and people have busy lives. And I know probably 30 years ago, I probably couldn't have got on some of these boards because between work and family, it's difficult. So I think it's hard to ask people to give a lot of their time. And I think you have one or two people who have the time, so they spend a lot more time doing research. So they become the expert. And I think some people feel like you can't override their ideas, but I think you can. I think you just have to have a strong personality and share ideas.
Well, again, not everybody's forte.
Not everybody's a Type A personality. That's right. That's right.
Now, I'm trying to think. Was there anything else that we've missed that went on at that Board of Selectmen? Because we talked about the B1, we talked about the aluminum versus the copper.
That's right. We had the liaisons. We had the fire chief.
Oh, that.
Yes, we're going to have the. So we're looking right now at the whether or not we want to form a committee within the town to review the fire chief position. Or do we want to hire a professional?
Now let me just interrupt. Explain to me how it was that somebody resigned and changed their mind. I mean, how does such a thing happen?
Yeah. Well, the fire chief had he had given his notice. He said he was going to retire.
Yeah.
And then I think he had some time to think about it, and he decided that maybe he was hasty in his decision.
And at that time, you weren't on the board.
No, I was not. No, it was prior.
And so wasn't it sort of put to? Didn't Jim put it to Kevin?
It was Jim and Kevin who had to make the decision.
And
yes.
Kevin.
Yeah, Kevin. I guess they ultimately made that decision.
Well, I think that's right.
Yeah, that it was time to have a change, and then Peter Patuchek had stepped forward to take over the position as chief. And Peter's been with the force for a long time, and then he decided that he did not want to do it. So
what's with it? What
it's a tough position. It's a tough position.
I know, but with something that serious, you've got to kind of.
It is. Yeah, well, I think it's
kind of.
You have to think it through. You have to think it through, and it's a big commitment because you're really on call 7 days a week, 24 hours a day as fire chief. I mean, yes, you can go away, but I think Cole Bushnell really did. He was here for every single event, so it becomes a full-time 24-hour-a-day job.
Now, do we really need deputy fire chiefs and deputy police chiefs?
Something we got to look at.
In your humble opinion.
And again, it's obviously my opinion because here we don't represent the board. I'm representing myself.
Oh, yeah, we don't be sure to say that.
And we have to look at I think a lot of these positions that we have. I think a deputy chief and a deputy fire chief, they become important because obviously the chief does have to go away at some point in time. He may want to go on vacation. He may have to go to a seminar. So they may be positions that are necessary. I don't have enough knowledge yet to make that decision, but we'll have to see as time goes on how those positions shake out. And they're gonna again put it out to the current fire department, those members, to see if somebody wants to come forward as the chief. We don't know yet. That's what the town administrator is actually putting together for our next meeting, hopefully what the cost will be to go outside. And years ago, you could get fire chiefs. They would actually sit on a committee, and they would help you pick a new fire chief. They no longer do it, though. I touched base with the Fire Chiefs Association of Massachusetts today, actually, and they no longer do that. So you're sort of stuck to either doing it locally or having the professionals.
Because I heard this figure of 7,000, and then I heard 15. I didn't know there was an additional 15,000.
No, it would be 7,000 is if we sort of put out the RFP for a new fire chief, and then we allow an agency or an individual to review those and pick the best, 3 or 4 or 5, depending on how many are available. And then we form an internal committee to review those. That's $5,000 to $7,000 to $8,000. To do it, have a professional bring forward to the Board of Selectmen 3 candidates could be as much as $19,000, $20,000.
Huh.
So it's quite a disparity. So we'll have to see.
Well, before I forget, I just want to say that he has agreed to he has agreed to answer any questions that you might want to email to me, and it should be down there. My email should be down there, which you are willing to
do. And again,
with
they may be my opinion, because again, I don't speak for the board, but they may be my opinion on something.
But it won't necessarily be every question. I mean, God knows what you might be asking. I mean, it'll be at your discretion. Just
as long as they're not personal, right? No.
Oh well, right. So again, we'll be back here in a couple of weeks after the next Board of Selectmen's meeting. And thank you for watching Just Saying, because Christopher and I have been here just now, just saying. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.
Thank you.